G'day, business owner. I want you to think about last year. I want you to think about what your business turned over. Think about how hard you worked to produce that number. The hours, the team, the problems you solved, the calls that you took at midnight, the clients you kept happy, the fires you put out. Now, I want you to think about what was left at the end of the year. For most business owners doing over $1 million in revenue, there is a gap between those two things that doesn't make sense. Your revenue says one thing, but your bank account says something else entirely. You're not short on work. You're not short on clients. You're not short on effort. You are short on profit. And that's a completely different problem. Now let's talk about the problem. Most business owners treat a profit problem like a revenue problem. They hire more staff, they spend more on marketing, they push harder on sales, they take on more work, they get busier. And at the end of the year, the gap is still there. Sometimes it's even bigger. I've been inside hundreds of businesses across 15 plus industries: logistics, construction, mining, allied health, education, trade businesses of every kind. The owners are different, the industries are different, the revenue figures are different, but the problem is almost always the exact same thing. They are managing their top line revenue, and no one has ever managed the whole machine. Revenue is what comes in, but profit is what you keep. And these are not the same problem. And they don't even have the same solution. So, who is this for? Before I go any further, I want to be direct about who this is and who this isn't for. If you're a business that's turning over less than $1 million, then this is not the right video for you right now. Come down when your revenue is there. But if you're already doing $1 million or more, and the profit doesn't match the effort, then keep watching. Because what I'm about to show you is directly relevant to your situation. Because the reality is you've already done the hard part. You've built a business that generates real revenue. Most people just never get there. What you haven't done yet is engineer the financial structure that actually keeps that profit. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's reframe. There is something that nobody tells you when your revenue grows. Your accountant will file your tax return. They'll tell you that your revenue is up. Your expenses were this, your profit was that. Then they hand you a number that represents what that year produced. But what they don't do is show you how to change that number before next year starts. We do not count what happened, we build what happens next. Every dollar that comes into your business passes through a structure, and that structure determines how much of it you actually keep. Most business owners have never designed that structure. It grew, it accumulated, but it was never engineered. We engineer it. Now, across 15 industries, our average improvement we produce is 40%. 40% is the average profit improvement. That is not the ceiling, that is the average. 40% is the floor. Now, let me give you a case study for a logistics business. They were doing $5 million a year in revenue. That revenue grew 8% that year. 8% is pretty solid in freight. The owner was happy with the top line, but we saw a 481% increase in profit. And here is an outline of the numbers. Top line revenue went from 506 to 546. Their costs shrunk from 4.39 million to 3 million. And that represented a $1.78 million profit as a result of this strategy. Costs fell from 4.39 million to 3.03 million. Profit went from 305,000 to 1.78 million. Same business, same clients, same freight routes, completely different structure underneath. Now let me show you the most dramatic number in 15 industries of case studies. We had a food wholesale business. They were doing 15 million in revenue, moving product every day, invoices going out, revenue coming in. On paper, it looks like a thriving business. Revenue grew 27% that year. $3.3 million of new business came through the door. The additional cost to handle all of that revenue is only $65,000. That is not a typo. We produced an extra $3.3 million in revenue for only an extra $65,000 in incremental cost. So on that $3.3 million of revenue, the business spent $65,000, and it was because we restructured the cost base. The result? We saw a 525% increase in profit growth. This particular business had only a $94,000 profit before, and after implementing our system was able to increase that to $1.52 million of profit. Same industry, same product category, same market, but just a completely different structure underneath. Now, why did this happen? Most business owners have a cost structure that grew alongside their revenue. So when they were doing 500,000, the costs were calibrated for 500,000. But when they grew to 5 million, the costs just followed. Nobody ever stopped to ask, are these costs the right size? Are there commitments in this business that are here because they were always here, not because they are still earning their place? And that accumulated cost base is where your profit is going. Not to the market, not to your competitors, to a cost structure that has never been designed, only accumulated as you grew. So let me show you a farm services business. Here's where things get counterintuitive. A farm services operator in rural Australia grew revenue 24% and costs grew 51%. Now, costs grew at almost double the rate of revenue, but we still saw a 451% increase in profit growth. Every dollar of new spending was committed against a revenue milestone that had to be reached before the next commitment was made. Revenue had to arrive before the next cost was unlocked. The difference between scaling correctly and scaling blind is not the market, it's the sequence. Let me give you another case study for an earth-moving business. This earth-moving operator grew revenue 60% in 1 year and added $580,000 of new work to the business. The costs only grew $6,700. That is $6,700. Look at the growth trajectory of revenue compared to the growth trajectory of costs. On $580,000 of new revenue, this business had $6,700 of additional costs because the machines were already there, the operators were already there, the capacity was already there, but it was sitting idle, costing money and producing nothing. So when you fill idle capacity on a fixed cost base, the new revenue has almost nothing to pay for. It flows almost entirely to profit. So as a result, we saw a 335% increase in profit growth. Let me give you another case study for construction. Incredibly hard given the current space that we're in right now. And this is one of the most uncomfortable stories in the series. A construction business made a deliberate decision to turn down work. Revenue fell 45%, but profit doubled. We saw that the business went from $3.66 million to only $2 million in revenue, but we saw profit increase from $465,000 to $935,000. When you exit revenue categories that have thin or negative margins, the costs attached to those categories leave with the revenue. But those costs are often larger than the margins the revenue was producing in the first place. So revenue fell 1.65 million, costs fell 2.01 million, and the costs that came out were larger than the revenue that left. Revenue down 45%, but costs were down 65%. And as a result, we saw 101% profit growth. Half the business, twice the profit. You see, revenue is vanity, but profit is reality. Sometimes the path to more profit is actually less revenue, deliberately and strategically. Let me give you another case study, a camper trailer business. The same principle applies in product businesses. A camper trailer manufacturer had $9.8 million in revenue. Revenue fell by 5.6% that year, but costs fell 17%, 3 times faster than the revenue. And that resulted in 140% profit growth. So smaller revenue, far less cost, far more profit. See, product lines with weak unit economics were repriced or exited. And when those marginal products left, the overhead attached to them left as well. The costs that came out were larger than the revenue that they were attached to. So optimizing for volume was the mistake. Optimizing for margin per unit was the fix. Let me give you another case study, residential builder. A residential builder grew their revenue 73%, but costs only grew 32%. That's a 41% gap between revenue growth and cost growth. And as a result, we saw a 262% increase in profit growth. That was over $1 million. The profit structure was in place before the growth was chased. Every build priced against a margin floor. Subcontractor rates were locked in before scaling. Overhead tracked against project revenue in real time. You see, you don't need to double your revenue to double your profit. You just need the right structure under the revenue that you're already winning. Now, let me give you another example, a bathroom renovation business. A bathroom renovation business doubled its revenue, and costs grew at 70 cents for every new dollar of revenue. So that meant that 30 cents out of every dollar went straight to profit in a business that's usually synonymous with low margins. We had 201% profit growth. The same jobs, the same clients, the same market, but a different margin structure beneath every single job. You see, the jobs didn't change, the clients didn't change, the margin structure beneath every job changed. And when your cost floor is real and your contingency is built in, variations that arrive during a project no longer destroys the margin. Let me share with you an electrical contractor. They grew their revenue 31%. They grew their costs 18%. So that resulted in a 13-point gap between those two numbers. And 13 points sounds small, but on a $5.73 million revenue base, 13 points is $745,000 worth of differential. And that differential is profit. That was 182% profit growth. Revenue grew at nearly double the rate of costs. Profit grew at 6 times the rate of revenue. The team did not get bigger. The business didn't need to win a different type of work. The profit structure was put in place before the growth arrived. Let me give you another case study, a mining machining business. A mining machining business grew revenue 21%, but costs only grew 13%. So revenue grew at 3.5 times the rate of costs, and profit grew at 3.5 times the rate of revenue. As a result, a 74% increase in profit growth. The same multiplier in both directions is what disciplined cost structure produces for your business. This is not a lucky year. This is not a market windfall. This is a business where pricing is correct, labor is deployed efficiently, and overhead is managed against what it is producing consistently. Let me give you another case study, education. An education business nearly doubled its revenue. It grew at 87%, but we managed to reduce their costs by 3%. That meant that was a 242% profit growth. Revenue nearly doubled, but the costs fell and profit tripled. There is a difference between a business that grows and one that scales. Growth means revenue goes up. Scale means revenue goes up faster than costs. The IP in a knowledge business scales without the costs scaling alongside it. The moment that you add headcount to delivery, every new client, you have stopped scaling and you've started growing. This business restructured its delivery model. It content leveraged, systems scaled, the cost per additional client fell. Let me share another case study, recruitment. A recruitment firm doubled its revenue that year. Costs grew 195%, it nearly tripled. But we still saw a 93% profit growth. Costs grew nearly 3x, revenue grew 2x, but the profit still nearly doubled. Every cost was staged against a revenue milestone. Revenue arrived before that cost that justified it was committed. The curve never got ahead of the revenue. You see, most businesses that scale hard and lose money, they spend first and then just hope the revenue follows. This firm modeled the sequence before a dollar was spent. Let me give you another case study, a new division. So a trade business launched a brand new division. Year one, no prior revenue, built entirely from scratch, under our guidance. They did $7.5 million in revenue from zero in the first year. And they were profitable from the first month. $678,000 in operating profit. The default for a new division is that it loses for the first 2 to 3 years. This one never had a single month in the red. Why? The profit architecture was built before the first dollar was spent. Costs followed revenue, not the other way around. Let me show you an engineering case study. This engineering firm's revenue went backwards by 0.6%. Not through any commercial failure. Revenue essentially was flat. But we managed to get costs down 11%. Over $500,000 was removed from the cost base, which resulted in a 22% profit growth. No new clients, no new services, no new hours, just a better cost structure on a $7.68 million of existing revenue. Now, most mature professional services firms have a cost base that reflects history, not their current revenue. Nobody's ever reviewed it, line by line, and asked, does that still earn its place? Let me give you another example, allied health. An allied health practice grew revenue 7%, but costs fell 8%. That resulted in a 73% increase in profit growth. The margin was 38% versus an industry average of 20% or less. It's the same practice, the same appointments, the same services, but double the industry margin. Most practice owners accept 20% margin because everyone around them accepts a 20% margin. The ceiling is not a fact of the industry, it is the result of practices that have never examined their cost structure. Now, what do all of these businesses share in common? 14 industries, profit growth ranging from 22% to 1,525%. Let me just show you all of these case studies right now. What do they actually share in common? None of these businesses changed their industry. None of them won some unexpected market windfall. None of them hired a star salesperson. None of them stumbled on a lucky year. They examined their cost structure. They found where the money was leaving. They redesigned the structure so less of it was left. The work is not complicated, but it is very specific. And we focus on what we call these 7 profit levers. Every business has 7 profit levers. We have pricing, the rate per unit of work. We've got volume, the units of work delivered. We've got cost of delivery, the direct costs per unit. We've got overhead, your fixed operating costs. We've got your debt structure, your financing costs. We've got your tax position, your effective tax rate. And we've got your wealth extraction, what you actually keep. Now, most business owners are actively managing 1 or 2. Almost none have had all 7 assessed against the specific numbers at the same time. And when you pull the wrong lever, nothing changes. But when you pull the right lever in the wrong order, you get a short-term result and then it often snaps back. This diagnostic identifies the right levers in the right sequence for your specific business, in dollar terms, not in theory. Now, here's why your accountant can't do this. This is not a criticism. Your accountant performs a different function. They measure what happened, they file the numbers, they report on the result. But what they don't do is engineer what the next year produces before it starts. The diagnostic we run is forward-looking. The profit architecture we design is built before the financial year ends. You cannot retrofit a profit structure in April when the year is already over. You design it before January, and that is the work that we do. And we implement this as and when you need it for the 12 months ahead. So here's the guarantee. Across 15 industries, the average profit improvement that we produce is 40%. 40% is the floor. On a business doing $2 million in revenue with $400,000 in profit, a 40% improvement is $160,000 of additional profit per year. Compounding every year that you delay is $160,000 that you do not get back. On a $5 million revenue business with $600,000 in profit, 40% is $240,000 a year. On a $15 million business with $1 million in profit, 40% is $400,000 a year. Like, these are not projections. These are averages from businesses across 15 industries that we've worked with just in this case study alone, and hundreds of industries over the course of the last 2 decades. So here is how it works. We go through the diagnostic. We map every dollar of revenue against every dollar of cost, and we find exactly where the money is leaking. The profit architecture. We design the structure that keeps more, specifically in dollar terms, before implementation begins. We renegotiate supplier arrangements. We right-size the overhead. We correct pricing where analysis shows that it's below the true cost and is costing you profit. And then extraction. We build the structure so what the business keeps actually reaches you. Not just the P&L, reaches you. Now, the first step is the diagnostic. We map out every dollar of your revenue against every dollar of cost, every lever assessed against every other. And this is where we find where the money is leaving and why. The second step is the profit architecture. Based on the diagnostic, we design the structure that keeps more, specifically in dollar terms before the implementation begins. The third step is implementation. We put the right structure in place, we renegotiate supplier arrangements, we right-size the overhead, we correct the pricing where the analysis shows it's below the true cost. And the fourth step is extraction. We build the structure that ensures that the business keeps what is actually reaches you, and you can use that to build your wealth, enhance your lifestyle, and actually start working towards financial freedom. Now, this is not another project on your plate. We build it around your business. Your job is to keep running the operation you have already built. just using the tools that we will give you. So here's the simpler version. Most business owners have a cost structure that has grown without ever being designed. We help you design it. A logistics business, 481% profit growth on an 8% revenue growth. Food wholesale, 1,525% with only 65,000 in new cost. Earth moving, 335% increase with only 6,700 of new cost. Construction, 101% on a 45% revenue decline. Education, 242% more profit with costs falling. Allied health, 73% more profit with no new patients. Engineering, 22% on flat revenue. These are not exceptional businesses. These are businesses in ordinary industries that had someone examine their cost structure for the first time and help them engineer a better one. Your business has the same opportunity. So here's your next step. Take the profit scorecard. It only takes 2 minutes. And it shows you exactly where your business sits across these 7 profit levers, where the structure is working, where it's not, and where the dollar opportunity is. It's not a sales process, it's a diagnostic tool, and it will get you clear on the picture of what's possible on the revenue that you already have. The scorecard shows a significant opportunity. We'll have a conversation about a game plan session looks like and if we're the right fit to work together. So either comment scorecard below or click the link wealthhealthcheck.com.au and schedule your game plan session so we can do a deep dive and work at exactly how we can help you and whether we can turn you in one of our future case studies. The only question is whether you're ready to find out what is possible. I look forward to seeing you on the other side.